What's one rule that your school workplace has implemented that absolutely backfired? Story 1. Work instituted a points system for being late or calling off sick. Accrue too many points and you get written up, fired if it continues. They doled out the same number of points whether someone was a minute late or called off altogether, and if an absence lasted up to 5 days, it was still only one absence. So anyone who overslept or encountered heavy traffic and was running late would just stay home. For the rest of the week, after several months, they decided that being late was only worth half a point. Story 2. In our office, we're not allowed to have more than 14 consecutive days off. So one guy booked a cruise for a month, booked off 14 days, then 1 day back, then another 14 days off. He called in sick on his 1 day back. Story 3. A few years ago, we weren't allowed to stand in groups bigger than 4 at our school because this old teacher told us it was gang behavior and encouraging gang violence. One day, my entire year of like 100 people got in a massive group, screaming gang gang and throwing gang signs on our school field. So they had to bring every single teacher out to try and split us apart for a straight 20 minutes. Best school day ever. Story 4. Any support call lasting longer than 25 minutes must be reported to higher-ups for review. I.e., if you have too many, no matter if it's your fault or not, you get a disciplinary review. I implemented the rule of politely hang up on a customer as close to 25 minutes as you can and call them right back. I am sorry, I am experiencing a small issue with my phone. Is it okay if I call you right back? Gotcha. Outgoing calls are not reported or recorded. It's amazing. Story 5. My old boss tried implementing an incentive scheme for the underperformers while anyone who consistently did well received nothing. 3 of us quit within a month. Story 6. We used to be allowed to stream music, etc. on our computers. Spotify was an approved program and would come installed on your computer. Someone complained about productivity despite us always doing our work, and so the banned streaming of any kind on our computers. But now everyone just listens on their phones, so you walk around the office and nearly everyone has their phone out now. So it looks even worse when sponsors come into the office. Story 7. My friend worked as a technician at a place that did installation for telecom, sound, cable, pretty much anything tech-related really. The techs were paid by work order completion. Each job had a value that got paid out when you finished the work order. The experienced techs could finish more jobs in a day and made some seriously good money. They were motivated to work fast to get more jobs done, but also to do it correctly, because having to go back within a certain time window and fix a problem didn't pay out, so it lost money. Well, some new management came in and decided to change everyone to hourly wages. Their idea, to make techs focus on getting the job done right and not rushing it. All the really good techs saw a massive pay cut from it and immediately quit. The rest of the techs suddenly had no reason to finish jobs quickly since you got paid the same whether you did 2 installs or 10 installs in 1 day. So everyone just started slacking off. Within a few weeks, the orders were backed up so bad install dates were pushed out for a month or more. And when people finally did get their stuff installed, it took all day instead of a couple hours. That one changed completely over the company. Story 8. It was actually my rule when I was managing a store. My rule was that the closer had to do all the closing work and mark the checklist, and I would check it the following morning. However, I put a loophole in: if you close tonight and open tomorrow, you can come in early the following morning. I was really the only one who closed and then opened the following morning, and I knew that on many of those days I worked 10 hours with non-stop managerial work. So instead of staying late to clean, I like to come in early and do it in sunlight. Well, one day I followed my rule, and the next morning I woke up sick and had to call an employee to cover. He showed up to a dirty store, opted not to clean, and then got written up when the owner made a surprise visit. I didn't close, so it wasn't my job, and the owner said, "You work here and the store is dirty, so it is your job." I then had to go tell the owner that it was my fault, and he still responded regardless of what you did or didn't do. He came into a dirty store and did not clean it. That's not acceptable. I removed my rule change and just made it mandatory to clean before leaving, LOL. Story 9. No cell phones, and high school security collected them when you walked in, put them in Ziploc bags, and locked them up. They lost like 5 people's phones. Story 10. Had a fellow at my old place of work that was promoted to sales manager. Within a few days, he drafts up a document, which he tries to get all of us to sign, basically stating that we aren't working to our full potential, and that to make profit, so we would have to work even when we weren't working, aka taking calls from customers no matter the day or time. This resulted in an almost immediate revolt, and about 10 people bypassing him directly and going right to the owner. He was demoted, then later fired within a week. Story 11. Any software related to job, whether written inside or outside company time, belongs to the company. Me, so if I write and release malware at home, it's the company's problem. The clause was immediately removed. Story 12, the deputy head of our school banned fidget spinners, and rightly so. In his defense, they were everywhere. On the final day of year 11, someone hacked his school intranet login and edited the bulletin, leaving a notice in his name, saying that fidget spinners were now not only unbanned, but mandatory, and that aficionados could come to his office and learn tips and tricks from him. Story 13, all printers were defaulted to print two-sided, and you were unable to disable that feature. The thought process being that this would 1. Reduce paper waste by literally cutting consumption in half. 2. Prevent people from printing out personal and work printers. This was decided by a committee of people, primarily from HR, who were tasked by the CEO to find ways to reduce costs and improve our corporate culture. To improve our culture, we basically decided that we'd be cunts about work printers, and then we'd all sing together and have a Coke. What ended up happening instead was that corporate finance a brick because you can't or shouldn't print financials double-sided, and the IRS doesn't take too kindly to getting filings delivered to them in that fashion. Reverse the policy? Nope. Just force areas to add blank pages into documents so that we trick the printers. HR then implemented their new Gestapo program where you were rewarded for turning in anyone who was doing personal business on work computers or on work printers. The problem was that a stunning amount of personal business was actually stuff like employee benefit stuff, filling out insurance forms, submitting flex pay receipts, scanning your transcripts for our tuition assistance program, etc. While the VP of HR decided to go full-on thunder and say that employee benefit stuff wasn't work-related and needed to be done at home on your personal PC, our freaking chief legal officer came down as our voice of moral reasoning to say that was bullshit, and only then did some of the stupidity unfold. The printer thing was done officially once the CEO and CFO started getting double-sided financials. When they complained, their underlings gave them time studies to show the financial cost of having highly paid CPAs do like insert blank pages to trick printers instead of, doing accounting and stuff. Story 14, during our general meeting last week, the owner of the company went on a bit of a rant about negative reviews of management on a popular jobs website with a green logo. He demanded that we stop posting negative reviews immediately and shamed anyone in the room who had done so. As you can guess, people doubled down and posted their grievances on the same day as the meeting. Story 15, I was told this story when I was in the Army by a parachute rigger. The workday in the Army is 900 to 430. Riggers packing troop shoots had a daily quota of 35 shoots. Once they got good at it, these guys could be done by 230, which is a very nice workday indeed. Well, they got this new captain who decided that since these guys are getting 35 done by 230, then obviously making them work until 430 would increase output even more. So of course that units numbers went way down, and the 35 and you were done for the day was quickly reinstated. Story 16, in college after my freshman year, they decided on a new rule set to enforce a meal plan because students just weren't signing up for them, and students were renting small houses nearby. Therefore, you're not allowed to move off campus unless your home is within 30 minutes of campus. You have to have a meal plan while living on campus. Our food was god-awful bad. I researched into why it was so bad, and it turns out it was by Sodexo. Half the time, all the food was so horrid that we couldn't stomach it, and the other half it was just bad but stomachable. Know what happened? Students had meal plans, but they didn't eat. They went out and bought their own groceries to bring them back to their rooms. School realized it was wasting tons of food because it was preparing it and nobody was eating it. So tried to shame the students by showing us how much was wasted every week. Some students decided to respond by putting a sign on the administration's door saying, "Food won't be wasted if you give us some actual food we can eat." Another big one was when they implemented the housing lottery for our campus. Originally, it was a first-come, first-served basis. Administration got pissed because people started camping out in front of the area the night before, so the ones who really wanted certain roommates could make sure they were there bright and early. So the random lottery system comes in, and we were told we couldn't change a decision at all until a month after the next year started. Everyone just made swaps on their own and told the administration afterwards. Administration got pissed and said they needed to move back to their original rooms. And most everyone said no. So if you need me, here I am at this location. I swapped with this person so me and my friends could room together like we wanted. I was gone by this one, but the school had a very rare type of semester schedule that made us stand apart from everyone else. We were a block schedule. A new president came in, and she decided that we needed to get off that and instead go to a weird hybrid system that just sounded more convoluted than going to a normal semester system. Turns out, the faculty and students hated that idea in ridiculous amounts, and it showed in a campus-wide vote on it where the results were published. New president decided to force it to change by saying that the faculty had influenced the student body, that it was inconvenient for them, and therefore the votes of almost everyone who didn't like it didn't count. A massive amount of professors retired at the end of that year in response. Edit just to also say this, believe it or not, I love my time there. The professors and students were great. Just stupid admin decisions made some bad running experiences. It's also changed so much in the past 5 years that I can't even say if all these problems still exist now. I hope not. And since I've had so many questions, this was Tusculum College in Eastern Tennessee. I was there circa 2006 to 2009 before I transferred to a place that had a better degree for my major. Story 17, not me, but my friend's old place. My friend was one to show up a half hour early before work and was a commission-based salesman with salary, just like the other salesmen who would always show up barely on time to hours late. Friday night comes along and management decides to hold a meeting to announce the new policy. If you're late, you go home for the day, and if you're late 3 days a month, you're fired. The weekend goes by and everyone is on time. During the week, a few people call out sick right as the store opens. The weekend is coming up and my buddy is scheduled for Saturday, but not Sunday or Monday. And if in a Disneyland with his wife, who has Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off, Friday night, he packed his wife's car. Saturday comes along, and he's in the parking lot a half hour early. He pops in his favorite cassette, fires up a joint, and proceeds to hotbox his car. He walks in 5 minutes late, reeking a pot, looks at the clock, and then to his boss in front of the whole sales floor, and loudly says, "Oops, I'm late, guess I need to go home," with an eating grin on his face. The bosses started backpedaling the policy and started to tell him it wasn't for him, and they'll let it slide. He loudly stated that it wouldn't be fair if they made an exception for him and that he would see them Tuesday. When he got back to work on Tuesday, the policy was gone. Same company years later hired some absolute genius of an accountant who sold the idea to management that employees were making more than management and that they should go from commission to salary. All the top salesmen jumped ship ASAP. The remaining bottom feeders got a raise compared to their normal salary and commission, and they didn't have to do all day to get it. Less than a year later, they shut their doors for the last time. Story 18, Lonedale, our 14 school in Lonedale, Missouri, late 80s, early 90s. Our fairly small rural school went from K-8, so we split lunchtimes in our gym cafeteria. For some reason, our school actually invested in a noise control system because we could apparently be quite loud during lunch, and I guess the teachers got tired of trying to keep us kids quietish and eat. This new piece of equipment was mounted high on the wall and looked exactly like a stoplight. When it was green, we were free to talk. If it became yellow, we were to be careful of how much noise we made. If it turned red, it would buzz loud like when a game clock runs out at a basketball game. Installing this thing almost immediately had the opposite effect they desired. It became a game to us. We would only get quiet in order to make it go back to green. Then, as a large group, we would progressively get louder. We would stall it out at yellow before surging our collective voices to make it hit red, and buzz, at which time we would all cheer, laugh, and get quiet again to reset it to green. Good times. Story 19, programmer here. Management implemented an agile work tracking system that measured programmers by the amount of feature requests they completed. We quickly figured out how to game that system by breaking everything down into the maximum number of feature requests we could imagine. We'd make separate feature stories for make new button, make button blue, make button respond when clicked, make new page for the new report, run business logic to get results, display results in grid, set font for grid, make grid sortable, make back button return a previous page. We became great at dividing a one-day task into 21-hour tasks. Management loved it. Our team looked 20 times as productive and became an example to show off our process as the best performing team, despite producing far less actual work and more useless form filling. Story 20, stopped giving kickback for walk-in sales. I work at a hotel, and the high management had the bright idea not to give us anything for charging walk-ins, late checkouts, early check-ins, and upgrades. So now we give them for free whenever we can. Story 21, our process integrity people decided every international order over 100,000 needed to be approved by a manager at the purchase requisition stage before the sales order could be processed. The problem, purchase requisitions only generated after the sales order was completed. This meant it was impossible to complete any international order worth more than 100,000, and they launched this policy unannounced 2 days before Christmas. I ended up staying in the office until 9 at night, trying to get our data people to create a way for me to order 300K in parts from Sweden before the holidays. Story 22, a big shipping company I worked at for a couple months said we would be working 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. They didn't tell all the new employees, including myself. that holiday hours were going to be 7 a.m. to whenever we feel like telling you to go home. Around 10 to 11 p.m., naturally, people would get in 5 to 7 hours of work and go on break, then just not come back. That led we can no longer allow lunch breaks. Me and roughly 50 to 70 other workers quit on the spot. Story 23, when my school moved to a newly built site, they also tried to establish a new rule set for a new generation or something. The first one, because they loved their fancy new building so much, was that nobody was allowed to leave the building until the end of the school day, including breaks. The front door would literally be locked unless there was a fire alarm. Suffice to say, either nobody turned up or a lot of fire alarms were pulled before the rule was thrown away. There were also military-style uniform inspections at random throughout the day, and they looked to us, I was in sixth form, to set the example for the kids. However, they were so overzealous and dictatorial that it became comical, and we all very quickly stopped caring and told them to send us home or get lost and stop treating us like trash. There were more stupid rules like this, but our first group of sixth form ended up tearing them all down in a couple of months. Story 24, when I was in 8th grade, my school implemented a new iPad program. We were recognized as an Apple certified school or some bullshit like that. The problem was that students were just using them to play games. Administration didn't have any way to crack down on it, and teachers had no clue how to implement it in the classroom. We constantly played 2048 in class, since it was impossible for them to block all the different iterations for it, and when they made an instant demerit to be found playing it. Even in lunch and homeroom, we just switched over to browser Tetris. It was so bad that one kid who sat right next to me didn't even try to focus on school. He would spend the entire period playing on his iPad, then constantly complained that he kept scoring 50s and 60s on his tests. Story 25, an industrial site I used to work for, they introduced an absolutely no overtime policy. The people that most commonly worked overtime were the maintenance guys. They had to cut out their preventative maintenance in order to make their hours while being available for all shifts. It took 3 months of daily breakdowns before they decided to try something else. Story 26, my middle school tried to prohibit students from bringing backpacks into class. You could bring a purse, bag, etc. However, just not a backpack. They wanted students to either stop by their locker before every class period impossible, without being late, or carry a large stack of heavy textbooks around all day. Due to the latter reason, the rule got canceled within a week. This was in 199899. So I'm not sure what they were trying to achieve with this rule. One job I had a nails should only be in neutral colors rule. Every rule was enforced rather strictly except for this one, because per the words of a manager, every woman would get written up. Story 27, no N-words in the Huck Finn. Our high school teacher made us buy the censored version for his class, and numerous parents complained about the censorship, as well as the added cost since our school library had set to the original we could have read for free. Story 28, no one can clock in more than 5 minutes early. There is too much overtime. Well, this has resulted in the shift relief not getting onto the floor for 15 minutes, because before you have to be clocked in to do your daily safety meeting, which takes 15 minutes, which is causing the people who are waiting to go home to clock 15 minutes later, which renders the stop clocking in 15 minutes early thing a moot point. Story 29, a nursing home in our area thought it would be a great idea to bring back the traditional white nursing caps. They made it mandatory for all female nurses to wear during their shifts or be written up and eventually pointing yourself out. Male nurses were not included. About half of the staff quit within the first 2 weeks. Several started working at my facility. The others that stayed said that the residents and families of residents laughed and made fun of the nurses constantly. Pretty degrading in comments. Basically, about 3 months after this all went down, someone from corporate came in and fired all the directors who implemented the uniform change, and everything went back to normal. Several nurses stayed with my company, but a few went back when the rules changed. Story 30, no swapping shifts without a shift swap form. Immediately backfire when the manager had a stack of shift swap forms every day to approve and update the digital roster. Story 31, one of top managers for my work decided that everyone who's worked there for 7 years had to do a special online training course that consisted of 2 400-page volumes of leadership training followed by a 2025 question test for each volume. You were expected to complete this within 1 year of being automatically signed up for the course. Failure to pass the tests or to complete the course by the end of that year rendered you ineligible for promotions and almost guaranteed to be laid off within a year. So many people tried to take the guaranteed severance package option by not doing the course that they had to change the rule that you wouldn't get laid off or not promoted, but you still had to do the course. People still didn't do it. That guy finally left shortly after, and a new guy replaced him and promptly chucked that course and the whole idea of it into the garbage. Story 32. As a part-time employee at Walmart, I was told that I'd need 3 weeks in advance to change anything about my schedule. I was going back to school for the summer pretty abruptly, and told my managers that I'd need Tuesdays and Wednesdays removed from my schedule for the next 2 weeks immediately so that I could go to school. They told me no, so I went in the day before class and just quit. No 2-week notice from me. I was pretty clear that I was going to go to school regardless of whether they'd fix my schedule, and I wasn't about to get fired for not showing up for half of my shifts. Story 33. It's in place this year, but I'm assuming it's going to backfire shortly. My high school banned backpacks and phones this year and took away advisory, which was pretty much a free period for clubs to meet. Thank God I graduated last year and don't have to deal with this bullshit, but I'm sure it's not going to go very well. Story 34. Way back in the antediluvian days of the 20th century, I worked as a government inspector in one of the larger U.S. states. This was before the advent of government employee unions. Each fiscal year, the personnel department would come up with proposals for reimbursing employees for official travel, discuss it with an employee association, and send it to the state legislature for rubber stamping. One year, someone came up with the bright idea that travel reimbursement should cover more than overnight trips. Employees who were required to travel more than 25 miles from their headquarters should get a lunch allowance. My guess is that no one looked hard at the proposal, and those that did were thinking of staff who went to occasional meetings, not people who were on the road every day. While my agency had the state divided up into districts, inspectors in the districts were on the road almost daily. In my case, it was a combination of overnight and day trips. It was pretty common to be more than 25 miles away from my office, and my colleagues and I discovered that it was easy to change pretty common to almost always. Multiply that by not only my own agency staff, but staff in every other agency that did field work. We cleaned up on the lunch allowances. The state budget for employee travel was completely blown before the year was half over, and as soon as legally possible, the rule was changed to cover only specific emergency conditions. Story 35. College removed chairs in cafeteria, so people wouldn't hang around. Now people just don't eat at the cafeteria. It's a ghost hall, and most of the food is thrown away daily. Really sad. Story 36. In an attempt to make school more enjoyable, I guess, they put a jukebox in the cafeteria. This was in 2001, so there was a bunch of generic pop songs in it and like a handful of classic rock songs. My school was full of rednecks, and they wanted country music, so the only song that ever got played was That Smell by Skynyrd. For a week, everyone eating lunch got to hear that song like 5 to 7 times. I say a week because that was how long it took before some stoner tweaker got fed up and cut the power cord. Story 37. Pizza place I worked at in high school implemented a zero-tolerance policy on employees taking home any food home that wasn't paid for at non-employee prices. Any screw-ups or unpicked up orders, trash. The local homeless population started flocking to the store and calling in bogus orders because they knew there would be free pizza in the dumpster every night. Story 38. Worked in an office with strict 8:30 to 5 office hours. As time went by, people would come in later, say 8:45, but might stay till 6 or even later. One day, one of the directors got pissed off because someone he wanted to talk to wasn't there at 8:40 and sent a nasty email demanding that everyone stop showing up late, saying we all had a bad work ethic, etc. From then on, everyone was in at dead on 8:30 and, of course, left at 5 on the dot. Story 39. Someone sprayed a swear word on the door, so the director thought ID would be a good idea, that if no one stood up and paid for the damage, couldn't be just wiped off, I heard. And because, of course, no one took responsibility, they claimed that just everyone could pay 1 or 2 euros. That way, the school could pay the repairs and still have money left to repair any damage that would occur later. Some idiot or genius sprayed, "Don't you have insurance on a few more doors that were next to the original door?" I assumed they just used the money we paid to repair it, but they didn't mention that week again. Story 40. My school forced us to memorize things instead of understanding them. This has been detrimental to me, since work life is all about understanding complex issues. I'm still fairly new to mastering the concept of truly understanding an idea. Story 41. When I was in school, I was part of a board game club that just wasn't very good. We never won a competition, and it led to a lot of negative vibes among the students. Anyway, they just decided to ban board games in general. Anyone got caught playing would be put into detention. A few weeks go by, and I'm asked to go to the storeroom, and guess what I found? A stash of all the old board games. You bet I shoved a chessboard eye up my. Story 42. Oh gosh, in school back in the day, we participated in a diversity-driven activity carried out in the form of the Wall of Tolerance or something along those lines. Basically, we had to write down stereotypes and put them up so we could tear them down. It ended up looking like the wall of racism. It was so bad. I'm just glad we didn't end up on local news. Story 43, for some reason my department started a rule having to keep phones in their cars or locker. Eventually the supervisor said it caused no other department was told this. Story 44, boss insists that lunchtime is from 1200 to 12:30 p.m. No exceptions. Lunch is not paid time. The second day, he comes in hot to trot with something for me to do between 1200 and 12:30 and needs it done right away. I look over at my clock, which says 12:09 or whatever, and say you said yesterday that lunch is from 1200 to 12:30. No exceptions, and went back to my sandwich. If I don't get paid from 1200 to 12:30, there's no way, and I'm working for free. Story 45, delivery driver here. Manager was tired of the higher-ups bitching about our delivery times, how long it takes to leave and get back to the store. She implemented a 22-minute delivery time rule. If your average went over for 3 consecutive days, it was a write-up or termination. LOL, okay? Tell me how we're supposed to go to the far end of our delivery range, 10 minutes one way on a good day, but 15 to 20 on heavy traffic times. Us for getting stuck behind trains. There are a lot of train tracks around town, and you can get stuck for 10 minutes. There's also a ton of variables. Bad weather, bad traffic. Customer has to count out and pay you in quarters. Customer doesn't have cash, so you have to call the store to run a card. One regular customer is a prison, so sometimes we can wait for 20 minutes just for them to walk across the grounds to meet with us. Some days we're ducking slammed and don't have enough drivers. Most of us try our hardest, but 22 minutes or less for our faraway deliveries. Especially if it's a double is extreme. Most places have 30 minutes or less for their delivery times, which makes sense. Didn't last long, but we still have a computer to dictate how long things will take. No variables are accounted for. Now we just fudge the numbers by manipulating dispatch. Extra info, we cover 2 towns, so it's a pretty large area. Recently, one of our competitors shrank their delivery range, so it has increased our business. As GM of a small business, I had an informal, just shoot me a text if you will be late or sick and can't come and rule. That policy backfired when one employee texted me 5 days in a row being late. They lived closer to the office than I did, and I only had a 7-minute commute. They got all when I finally wrote them up for being late, claiming I thought we just had to send you a text. So the rule went to just call me if you were sick and not able to come in. That worked okay until this past week. First, one employee called in 3 days in a row, intentionally calling before the office opened. Knowing that I and my location manager wouldn't be there, he got rid of his cell phone about a month ago and claimed to not have a landline. He would call from an unknown caller ID, so we couldn't even call him back. Second, I had a very early morning flight on Saturday, and all my staff knew I would be out of town, and when I land after 3 hours to find my phone had been blowing up, one employee decided to wait until he knew I was on the flight to text me that he would not be coming in. That left me trying to arrange employees at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, without access to my computer or scheduling Excel stuff, in a city 1,500 kilometers away. Now the rule is if you are sick, you need to call and speak directly with either the GM or a location manager. Texting and voicemail are no longer accepted. Edit lessons learned vague rules will be exploited by employees. It's a cruel fact of life, and better to be thought a dictator for a day than as a chump for months. Story 46, went to a low-income school where extremely few were given about piercings, hair color, etc. New principal arrived from a higher-income school and suddenly started enforcing the dress code. Attendance rate starts dropping. Wonder which looks worse on a principal's record. Shout out to the teachers who continued giving no despite admin orders. At least some folks had their priorities in order, lol. Story 47, to combat students from repping gang colors of my high school senior year. The principal banned the color red, not blue, just red, because I guess the high school was in an Norteño area. The news covered it, and it was repealed within a month or 2 into the school year because it was just such a stupid rule, banned red, as in even if your shoelaces were red, or if you were just wearing red earrings, that petty. For those outside CA, Norteño red gang colors, Crips blue colors. There are more, but those are 2 big ones in Northern California. Story 48, I tell this story a lot mostly because it explains where my attitude comes from my mother. At a small-town Kansas middle school, administrators had this system called the STEP program. Basically, students were to carry around this weekly report card where a school faculty member could write any of the students up for a multitude of things. If you called someone an insult, you got a step. If you were late to class, step. If you fell asleep during class, step. I was considered the teacher's favorite a lot of the time because I enjoyed school and learning, but my step sheet wasn't empty. No, my step sheet was mostly Pop forgot his pencil, again, or Pop wrote in his novel during class time. etc. Very mundane things, and mostly just me being forgetful or just bored in class. So you get 2 free steps, basically nothing happens. However, when you get to step 3, you have to fill out this additional form that has a gold copy, pink copy, etc. They were really getting us Kansas middle schoolers ready for the corporate world. Anyway, the form is to explain, in your words, why you got all 3 steps. Then you're supposed to take it to one of your parents and have them sign. Unfortunately, my parents work second shifts, and I was a latchkey kid, so I was in bed by the time my parents got home from work, and ID, forget to leave it out, or they wouldn't see it, or ID, forget the sign thing at home. Yes, lots of excuses, but happens, and if you forget the step 3 form, guess what? You get another step now, you're at step 4. And step 4 means I am removed from class, taken to the front office, and am told to call my parents in front of faculty member. This usually always happened in the afternoon by the time my parents are at work, and ID always choose my mom, because she was more capable of getting to the phone than my dad. So, ID call up my mom and tell her what happened. Shed then asked to speak to whomever was my guard that day. We joked that the faculty member that removed me from class took me to the office and monitored me during the call as my prison guard. And ID hear her berate them for about 5 minutes about how she was busy. The entire program was stupid, and I was doing well in school, so none of the other mattered. This went on from grade 6 to 8th. Finally, my mother had enough. Apparently, her manager told her no more calls from my school, or she was going to be written up. So she called the school principal and requested a meeting with him. She had me go with her because she wanted to know exactly why I was being written up. The principal claimed the program helps students learn responsibility and gets them ready for the real world. My mother explained she didn't carry around a sheet where all her write-ups are kept. She wasn't required to call her parents when she got in trouble, and the things I was being written up for are ridiculous. She then piled all pink copies of the step 3 forms that I'd been given over the 3 years, and most have been forgetting a pencil. She understood it was up to her to provide pencils for me, and it was up to me to have necessary utensils for class. However, in the real world, she explained that she isn't required to bring a utensil to work because work provides those things. Then she looked at the principal and said, "Do you provide the coffee that you drink every morning? Do you bring notebooks you take notes in during meetings?" The principal looked so flustered and didn't have an answer. He did tell my mother that there wasn't anything he could do, as it was the school board that implemented the program. She nodded, told him thank you, and we walked out. I went back to class. Next school board meeting, my mother went to them and told them exactly what she told the principal. No one had a decent argument to give my mother in regards to how the STEP program was implemented. The board told her she'd need overwhelming parental support in order to remove the program. She nodded, told them thank you, and we walked out. My mother had a second job. She went to every PTA meeting. She called everyone in the phone book, went door to door, and she petitioned the parents about the program. For the most part, a good portion of people agreed with my mother, and they signed. Some other parents took initiative as well and began petitioning along with my mother until almost every household had been contacted in this small town. Next school board meeting, my mother provided copies of the petition to the board and demanded they remove the program. They did so. Edit, I told my mom that I posted the story here on Reddit about the STEP program and that everyone has been so kind, commenting on her badassery. She laughed and said, paraphrasing, "It was the stupidest policy, and the teachers had favorites they never wrote up. They were singling you out because you were the queer kid, and we were the outsiders in town. We moved there when I was 11, and I was tired of dealing with it. You were in so much trouble when you were one of the quietest kids with some of the best grades."